What would you do if you lost your little brother when you were just 10 years old? Would you move on? Would you forget? Marcus Thompson never did. For 30 years, he kept a photograph on his wall, a little boy with bright eyes and the sweetest smile. Everyone told him to let go. Everyone said his brother was gone forever. But then a woman he'd only known for 2 weeks walked into his hallway, looked at that photograph, and said something that would change his life. That boy lived with me, and he never stopped believing you'd come for him. Get comfortable, because what I'm about to tell you will restore your faith in miracles. Welcome to Voice of Granny. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you are watching from. You know, sometimes life has a way of bringing the past back to you when you least expect it. And that's exactly what happened to Marcus Thompson on a quiet Tuesday morning in his beautiful home in Atlanta, Georgia. Marcus was a successful man. He owned hotels, restaurants, and buildings across the city. People knew his name. When he walked into a room, everyone noticed. But here's the thing about success. Sometimes it's just a mask we wear to hide our deepest pain. That morning, Marcus was standing in his hallway, looking at an old photograph hanging on the wall. It was a picture of a little boy with bright eyes and the sweetest smile you've ever seen. He looked at that picture every single day, and every single day, it broke his heart a little more. Then something incredible happened. His housekeeper, a kind woman named Grace, had only been working there for about 2 weeks. She was quiet, the type of person who did her job and never asked questions. But that morning, as she was dusting the furniture, she stopped right in front of that photograph. Her hands started shaking. Her eyes filled with tears. "Sir," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I know this boy." Marcus turned around slowly. His heart started beating faster. "What did you say?" Grace took a deep breath. "That boy in the picture, he lived with me. At the children's home in Savannah. We called him Tommy. He used to tell us he had a big brother, a brother who called him Little Soldier." The words hit Marcus like a punch to the chest. Little Soldier. That's what he used to call his baby brother. That's what he whispered to him every night before bed. That's what he was saying the last time he saw him, 30 years ago. Let me tell you what happened all those years ago. Marcus was 10 years old. His little brother, Jamie, was only 5. They lived in a small but happy home with their parents. Their father worked at the post office, and their mother taught piano lessons in their living room. Life wasn't fancy, but it was full of love. One Sunday afternoon, they all went to Piedmont Park. It was a beautiful day. The sun was shining, children were laughing, and music was playing in the distance. Marcus was pushing Jamie on the swings, both of them laughing and having the time of their lives. Then their mother called Marcus over to help with the picnic basket. It was just for a minute. Just 1 minute. But when Marcus turned back around, Jamie was gone. The swing was still moving, back and forth, but Jamie wasn't there. What followed was every parent's worst nightmare. The screaming. The searching. The police cars with their flashing lights. Hundreds of people looking everywhere. In the bushes, by the lake, in the parking lot. But Jamie had vanished like smoke in the wind. The police did everything they could. Jamie's picture was on every news channel, every newspaper. People called in tips from all over the state. But weeks turned into months, and months turned into years, and still, there was nothing. No trace. No clue. Nothing. And slowly, Marcus watched his family fall apart. His mother stopped playing piano. The house that used to be filled with music became silent as a grave. She would sit by the window for hours, just staring out, waiting for a little boy who never came home. His father started working double shifts, staying away from home because being there hurt too much. And Marcus? Marcus carried the guilt like a heavy stone in his chest. He was supposed to be watching his brother. He was supposed to protect him. "I'll find you, Jamie," Marcus whispered to himself every night. "I promise I'll bring you home." But childhood promises have a way of turning into adult regrets. As the years passed, Marcus buried his pain in ambition. He worked harder than anyone else. He built a business empire from nothing. He became the kind of man who could buy anything he wanted. But no amount of money could fill the empty space in his heart. No amount of success could bring back the sound of his mother's piano or his father's laugh. His parents both passed away within a few years of each other, both of them dying with broken hearts, still wondering what happened to their baby boy. And now here was Grace, standing in his hallway, telling him that she knew Jamie, that she had lived with him, that he had been alive all these years. Marcus felt his legs go weak. He had to sit down. "Tell me everything," he said, his voice shaking. Tell me everything you know about him. Grace sat down across from him, tears streaming down her face. He was brought to the children's home when he was about 7 years old. They told us his parents had died in a car accident and that he had no family left. But Tommy, that's what they called him, he never believed it. He used to draw pictures of a house with a piano in it. He said he had a brother who would come find him one day. Marcus closed his eyes. His whole body was trembling. What happened to him? Where is he now? Grace's voice dropped to barely a whisper. When he was about 15, something happened. He got into a fight with some older boys who were bullying the younger kids. After that, he ran away. We looked for him everywhere, but we never found him. The room went silent. The only sound was the ticking of the clock on the wall and Marcus's ragged breathing. For 30 years, he had been building hotels and making millions. And all that time, his little brother had been out there somewhere, alone and afraid, waiting for someone to find him. Marcus stood up, his jaw set with determination. Grace, he said firmly, we're going to find him. I don't care how long it takes. I don't care what it costs. We're going to bring Jamie home. The next morning, Marcus couldn't eat. He couldn't sleep. All he could think about was Jamie, no Tommy, lost somewhere out there in the world. Grace had given him hope, but hope without action is just a wish. And Marcus was done wishing. It was time to act. Grace, he said as she arrived for work, I need you to take me to that children's home in Savannah. Today. They drove for 3 hours through the Georgia countryside. Marcus barely noticed the beautiful scenery passing by. His mind was racing with questions. Why had Jamie been told his family was dead? Who had taken him? How had a little boy simply disappeared from a park in the middle of the day? The Savannah Children's Home was an old brick building that had seen better days. The paint was peeling, the grass needed cutting, and the whole place looked tired and sad. But as they walked up the front steps, Marcus could hear the sound of children playing in the backyard, and it made his heart ache. An elderly woman answered the door. Her name tag read Sister Patricia. She had kind eyes and silver hair pulled back in a bun. Can I help you? She asked. Marcus pulled out his phone and showed her a picture, an age-progressed image of what Jamie might look like now, created by the police years ago. I'm looking for information about a boy who lived here. They called him Tommy. Sister Patricia's face went pale. She brought her hand to her mouth. Oh my lord, she whispered. I remember him. Come in, please come in. She led them to a small office filled with file cabinets and photographs of children on the walls. She sat down heavily, as if the memories were weighing her down. Tommy was special, she began. Most children who come to us are sad, broken. But Tommy? He had this light in him that wouldn't go out. He used to tell everyone that his real name was Jamie and that his brother was going to come for him. The other kids teased him about it, said he was making it up. Marcus felt tears burning in his eyes. But he wasn't making it up. No, Sister Patricia said softly. He wasn't. But we didn't know that. The woman who brought him here had all the right papers. A death certificate for his parents, identification documents, everything. It all looked official. Who is she? Marcus asked, his voice hard. Her name was on the documents as Linda Harper. She said she was a social worker. But years later, we found out that Linda Harper didn't exist. The papers were fake. By then, it was too late. Grace spoke up, her voice gentle. Sister Patricia, do you have anything of his? Anything he left behind? The old nun nodded. She opened a drawer and pulled out a folder. Inside was a single piece of paper, yellowed with age and handled so many times it was soft as cloth. When Marcus saw it, his world stopped spinning. It was a crayon drawing. A house with a big tree in the front yard. A piano visible through the window. And 2 stick figures holding hands, one big and one small. At the bottom, in a child's shaky handwriting, were the words, My name is Jamie Thompson. My brother Marcus will find me. Marcus couldn't hold back anymore. He put his face in his hands and wept. These weren't quiet tears. These were the kind of tears that come from 30 years of grief, guilt, and now a fragile thread of hope. Grace put her hand on his shoulder. Sister Patricia wiped her own eyes. He never stopped believing in you, the nun said softly. Even when everyone told him it was just a dream, he never stopped waiting. Marcus looked up, his eyes red but determined. Sister Patricia, I need to know everything. Where did he go when he left here? Did anyone see him? Did he say anything? The nun thought for a moment. After he ran away, we filed a missing person report, of course. But there was one thing. About a year later, A woman from a church in Augusta called me. She said a teenage boy matching Tommy's description had been staying in their shelter. He had been hit by a car, and was taken to Augusta Regional Hospital. But by the time I called the hospital, he had already been discharged. Marcus was already on his feet. What was the date? Do you remember? Sister Patricia checked her old records. July 15th, 2008. That very afternoon, Marcus and Grace drove to Augusta. At the hospital, they were directed to the records department. An older doctor, Dr. Reynolds, remembered the case. Yes, I treated that young man, he said, looking at the photo. He was in bad shape when they brought him in. Broken ribs, concussion. But what I remember most was how he had no ID, no memory of where he came from. He kept saying he needed to get back to Savannah, that he had to find someone at the children's home. Marcus's heart was pounding. What happened to him? He healed up and left. Said he was going back to Savannah to look for answers. That was the last I saw of him. So Jamie had tried to go back. He had tried to find his way home. But by then, Marcus's parents had both passed away, and their old house had been sold. Even if Jamie had made it back to Atlanta, there would have been no one there waiting for him. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He stood in the garden of his mansion, looking up at the stars, and he made a promise to the universe. I'm coming, little brother. I'm not giving up. Not this time. The next morning, he hired a team of private investigators, the best in the country. He gave them one job: find Jamie Thompson, no matter what it takes. For weeks, they searched. They tracked down every record, every hospital admission, every homeless shelter in Georgia. They found dead ends and false leads. But Marcus refused to quit. Then one evening, his phone rang. Mr. Thompson, the lead investigator said, we found something. There's a man living in Asheville, North Carolina. He goes by the name Tom Morrison. He's a street artist, paints portraits for tourists downtown. And sir, I'm sending you a photo right now. Marcus's hands shook as he opened the image on his phone. And there, staring back at him through the screen, was his brother. Older, with a beard and tired eyes, but unmistakably Jamie. Where is he? Marcus whispered. Pack Hill Street. He's there every day. Marcus didn't even pack a bag. He just grabbed his keys and started driving through the night, Grace beside him, both of them praying that after 30 years, the searching was finally over. The drive to Asheville felt like both the longest and shortest journey of Marcus's life. Every mile brought him closer to the brother he thought he'd lost forever, but it also brought a flood of fears. What if Jamie didn't remember him? What if he was angry? What if 30 years had created a gap too wide to cross? Grace sat quietly in the passenger seat, sensing Marcus's turmoil. He's been waiting for you his whole life, she finally said. Don't forget that. They arrived in Asheville just as the sun was rising, painting the Blue Ridge Mountains in shades of gold and pink. Pack Hill Street was just waking up. Shop owners opening their doors, the smell of fresh coffee drifting from cafes, street performers setting up their spots. And then Marcus saw him. At the corner, beneath a faded blue umbrella, sat a man with an easel. He was painting a portrait of a little girl who sat giggling on a stool while her mother watched. The man worked with careful, gentle strokes, occasionally smiling at the child to keep her happy. Marcus stopped walking. His legs wouldn't move. His heart was beating so loud he could hear it in his ears. That's him, Grace whispered, tears already forming in her eyes. From where they stood, Marcus could see his brother's face clearly. The years had changed him. His face was thinner, weathered by a hard life. His hands, once small and soft, were now calloused and scarred. But those eyes, those were the same eyes Marcus remembered. The same eyes that used to light up when Marcus came home from school. The same eyes that had looked at him with complete trust. Grace gently squeezed Marcus's arm. Go on, she said. He's right there. Marcus took one step forward, then another. His whole body was shaking. He had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in his mind, but now that it was here, every word had vanished from his head. The little girl's portrait was finished. The mother paid and thanked the artist, and they walked away. For a moment, the man sat alone, cleaning his brushes, humming softly to himself. Grace walked ahead. Excuse me, she said gently. Are you Tom Morrison? The man looked up, confused. Yes, ma'am. Would you like a portrait? Grace's voice cracked. Do you remember me? From Savannah? We called you Tommy. The man's face changed. His eyes widened. The paintbrush fell from his hand. Grace, he whispered. Grace from the home? She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Yes, baby. It's me. He stood up slowly, like he was afraid he might be dreaming. Why are you? Then Grace stepped aside, and Jamie saw Marcus. Time stopped. Two men stood on a street corner in Asheville, North Carolina, staring at each other across 30 years of pain and loss. One was a billionaire in an expensive suit. The other was a street artist in paint-stained jeans. But in that moment, they were just two brothers who had been ripped apart by cruelty and brought back together by love. Marcus tried to speak, but his voice broke. He pulled something from his pocket, a piece of paper, old and creased. He unfolded it with trembling hands. It was the drawing, the one Jamie had made at the children's home. The house, the piano, the two brothers holding hands. I found it, Marcus whispered. I found your message, little soldier. Jamie's face crumbled. His hands came up to his mouth as sobs tore from his chest. Marcus, he choked out. Is it really you? It's me, Jamie. I'm here. I'm so sorry it took so long, but I'm here. They moved toward each other like magnets, and when they collided, they held on like they would never let go. Marcus wrapped his arms around his little brother, not so little anymore, and felt 30 years of grief pour out of him. Jamie clung to him, his whole body shaking with sobs. People on the street stopped and stared. Some pulled out their phones, but most just watched in respectful silence, recognizing that they were witnessing something sacred. I looked for you, Marcus said, his voice muffled against Jamie's shoulder. Every day I looked for you. I never stopped. I swear I never stopped. I knew you'd come, Jamie sobbed. Everyone said I was crazy, but I knew. I knew you'd find me. They stood there for what felt like hours, just holding each other, making up for decades of missed hugs, missed birthdays, missed moments. Grace stood nearby, her hands clasped in prayer, tears of joy running down her face. Finally, they pulled back just enough to look at each other. Marcus cupped Jamie's face in his hands, studying every line, every scar, trying to see the little boy he remembered in the man standing before him. Look at you, Marcus said, his voice full of wonder. You're all grown up. Jamie laughed through his tears. I'm 35 years old, Marcus. I wasn't going to stay 5 forever. They both laughed then, that kind of laugh that comes after crying, when joy and sorrow are so mixed up you can't tell them apart. Come home, Marcus said. Please, come home with me. Jamie hesitated. He looked around at his small corner, his easel, his paints, the simple life he'd built from nothing. I don't have anything to offer you. I'm not successful like you probably are. You're my brother, Marcus interrupted firmly. That's all that matters. You're my brother, and I've been waiting 30 years to bring you home. Please don't make me wait any longer. Jamie nodded, fresh tears spilling over. Okay, he whispered. Okay, let's go home. As they packed up Jamie's things, which wasn't much, just his art supplies and a backpack, Marcus noticed a small sketchbook. He picked it up and flipped through it. Page after page was filled with drawings of the same things. A house with a piano, 2 boys playing in a yard, a family sitting at a dinner table. You remembered, Marcus said softly. Jamie nodded. I never forgot. Not for a single day. Even when I couldn't remember our last name or what city we lived in, I remembered you. I remembered that you called me little soldier. I remembered feeling safe. Marcus pulled his brother close again. You're safe now. I promise you're safe now. As they drove away from Asheville, Jamie looked back one last time at the street corner where he'd been making his living. Then he turned forward, toward whatever future was waiting for them, and for the first time in 30 years, he felt something he'd almost forgotten existed. Hope. The drive back to Atlanta was filled with both silence and stories. There were moments when neither brother could speak, the weight of lost years pressing down on them. Then there were moments when they couldn't stop talking, trying to fill in 3 decades with words. Jamie talked about the children's home, about Grace's kindness and Sister Patricia's gentle ways. He talked about the years on the streets after he ran away, how he'd learned to paint portraits to survive, how he'd searched for any scrap of memory that might lead him back to his family. Marcus talked about building his business, but he was honest about why. I thought if I became important enough, made enough noise in the world, somehow you'd hear about me and find me. Every interview I did, every time my name was in the paper, I was hoping you'd see it. When they finally pulled up to Marcus's mansion in Atlanta, Jamie's mouth dropped open. The house was enormous, white columns, manicured gardens, a fountain in the circular driveway. This is where you live? Jamie asked, almost whispering. Marcus looked at the house, and for the first time, felt a bit embarrassed by its size. It's just a building, Jamie. It's never been a home. Not without family in it. Grace had called ahead, and the staff had prepared a room for Jamie. But when Marcus opened the door to the master guest suite, Jamie looked overwhelmed. "This is bigger than some of the shelters I've stayed in," he said quietly. Marcus put a hand on his shoulder. "You don't have to stay here if it makes you uncomfortable. You can stay anywhere in the house you want. Or we can go somewhere else entirely. Whatever makes you comfortable." That night, they ordered pizza, Jamie's request, and sat on the floor of the living room eating it straight from the box, like they were kids again. The fancy dining room with its crystal chandelier sat empty, while two brothers reconnected over pepperoni and memories. "Can I ask you something?" Jamie said hesitantly. "Mom and Dad, are they?" Marcus's face fell. This was the conversation he'd been dreading. "They're gone, Jamie. I'm so sorry. Dad died about 15 years ago. Heart attack. And Mom, she passed a few years after that. I think her heart was just broken." Jamie set down his pizza, his appetite gone. Did they ever stop looking for me?" "No," Marcus said firmly. "Never. Not for one single day. Mom would sit by the window every evening, watching the street, hoping you'd come walking up. Dad kept your room exactly the way you left it for years. They died hoping, Jamie. That's the truth. They never stopped hoping." Tears streamed down Jamie's face. "I wanted to find them so badly. There were so many nights I'd dream about Mom's piano playing and Dad's laugh. I just couldn't remember where to look." Marcus moved closer and put his arm around his brother. "They knew you loved them. And if they're up there somewhere watching, they know you're home now. That's what matters." Over the next few days, Marcus showed Jamie around Atlanta. But more importantly, he showed him pieces of their past. They drove by the old house where they'd grown up. It looked smaller than Jamie remembered, but the big oak tree in the front yard was still there. They went to Piedmont Park, standing at the playground where everything had changed. "I used to come here," Marcus admitted. "Every year on the anniversary. I'd just sit and remember that last day, wishing I could go back and change it." Jamie looked at his brother with understanding. "Marcus, you were 10 years old. This wasn't your fault. I was supposed to watch you." "You were supposed to be a kid," Jamie corrected gently. "We both were. Someone took that from us. But that's not on you." Those words lifted a weight from Marcus's shoulders that he'd been carrying for 3 decades. One afternoon, Marcus led Jamie to a room in the mansion he'd never shown anyone. He unlocked the door, and inside was a shrine to their childhood. Their mother's piano sat in the center, polished and maintained. On the walls were family photos, Jamie's baby shoes, report cards, drawings Marcus had saved. Even Jamie's old blanket, carefully preserved. Jamie walked around the room in stunned silence, touching things gently, as if they might disappear. When he reached the piano, he ran his fingers over the keys without pressing them. "Do you remember how to play?" Marcus asked. "I don't know," Jamie admitted. "I dream about it sometimes. Music that I can almost hear, but not quite." Marcus sat down on the bench and patted the space beside him. Mom's favorite song was Claire de Lune. She played it every Sunday morning. He began to play, slowly, imperfectly. His fingers stumbled over some of the notes, but the melody was there. And as he played, something incredible happened. Jamie's hands moved to the keys, and he began to play the harmony part. He didn't know how he knew it, but his fingers remembered what his mind had forgotten. The two brothers sat at their mother's piano, playing her favorite song together, and it felt like she was right there with them, smiling. That evening, as they sat on the back porch watching the sunset, Jamie turned to Marcus with a serious expression. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." "Anything," Marcus said. "Why? Why did this happen to me? Who took me, and why did they do it?" Marcus had been dreading this conversation too. He pulled out a folder he'd been keeping. "I hired investigators. We found out that you were taken by a woman named Linda Harper. At least, that's the name she used. She was part of a child trafficking ring. She sold children to people who couldn't have kids legally or who didn't want to go through proper adoption channels." Jamie's face went hard. "So I was sold. Like property." "Yes," Marcus said quietly. "But the people who bought you got scared when they saw your face all over the news. Instead of returning you, they abandoned you at the children's home with fake papers saying your parents were dead. By the time the authorities figured out the papers were forged, the trail was cold. And this Linda Harper woman? Dead. Died in prison 5 years ago. She was caught eventually, but not soon enough to help us find you." Jamie was quiet for a long time. Good, he finally said. I don't think I could handle knowing she was out there living her life while mine was destroyed. Marcus squeezed his brother's shoulder. Your life wasn't destroyed, Jamie. It was interrupted. But you're here now. You survived. And we have the chance to build something new together. Jamie looked at his brother, and for the first time since coming home, he smiled. A real, genuine smile. Yeah, he said. Yeah, we do. In the weeks that followed, Jamie slowly began to feel like he belonged. The mansion became less intimidating. The staff became friends. And most importantly, the brothers began to truly know each other again. Not as the children they'd been, but as the men they'd become. But Marcus knew that bringing Jamie home was only the first step. There was something bigger he wanted to do, something that would honor not just their story, but every family torn apart the way theirs had been. One morning at breakfast, Marcus pushed a folder across the table to Jamie. I want to show you something I've been working on. Inside was a business plan for a foundation. The Thompson Foundation, it was called. Its mission: to find missing children, support foster care systems, and help families torn apart by trafficking and loss. Jamie read through it, his eyes growing wider with each page. Marcus, this is incredible. But this is going to cost millions. I have millions, Marcus said simply. And I've spent 30 years building wealth I didn't need. It's time to use it for something that matters. But I can't do this without you. I want you to be part of it. Help me design the programs. You lived it, Jamie. You know what these kids need in ways I never could. Jamie's hands trembled as he held the folder. You really want me to be part of this? Not just part of it. I want us to run it together. Brothers. Like we should have been all along. For the first time in his adult life, Jamie felt like he had a purpose beyond just surviving. He had a reason to take all the pain he'd endured and transform it into something that could help others. They worked tirelessly over the next few months. Marcus handled the business and legal side. Jamie worked with social workers and former foster children to develop programs that would actually make a difference. Grace came on board too, using her experience from the children's home to train staff on trauma-informed care. The day of the foundation's grand opening, the event hall was packed. News crews were everywhere. Politicians gave speeches about the importance of protecting children. But when it came time for Marcus and Jamie to speak, they asked everyone to sit down and just listen. Marcus went first. 30 years ago, my little brother was taken from a park in Atlanta. Our family was destroyed. Our mother died with a broken heart. Our father worked himself to death trying to cope with the pain. And I spent 3 decades building an empire to try to fill the emptiness inside me. He paused, looking at Jamie. But money can't buy back lost time. Success can't replace the people you love. What brought my brother home wasn't wealth. It was the kindness of a woman named Grace who refused to forget a little boy who said his brother would come for him. Jamie stood up and joined Marcus at the microphone. I spent most of my life believing I was forgotten. I was told I had no family, that no one was looking for me, that I needed to accept my new reality. But I couldn't accept it because deep down, I knew someone was out there who loved me. His voice grew stronger. There are thousands of children right now who are living the nightmare I lived. They're in foster care, on the streets, trapped in trafficking situations, or simply lost in a system that's too broken to help them. This foundation exists for them. To tell them, you are not forgotten. Someone is looking for you. And we will not stop until you're home. The room erupted in applause. People were crying, not sad tears, but tears of hope. After the event, as people mingled and reporters conducted interviews, Marcus and Jamie slipped away to a quiet corner of the hall. Behind them hung the foundation's logo. 2 figures holding hands, with a piano in the background and the words, "Never stop looking," beneath it. Mom and Dad would be proud, Jamie said softly. They would be proud of you, Marcus corrected. You survived when most people wouldn't have. You never lost hope. You never stopped believing. That's the real miracle in all of this. Jamie shook his head. The miracle is that you never gave up. You could have moved on, assumed I was dead, and just lived your life. But you didn't. Even before Grace walked into your house, you were still keeping that photograph on the wall. Still remembering. Still hoping. Marcus pulled his brother into a hug. That's what love does, Jamie. It doesn't give up. It doesn't forget. It waits, and it hopes, and it keeps believing even when the whole world says to let go. 6 months later, the Thompson Foundation had helped reunite 15 families. 15 children who had been missing were back home. 15 families who had been living in darkness could finally see light again. The brothers made it a point to meet each family personally. They'd sit with the children and tell them, "We know what you've been through, and we're here to tell you that it gets better. The pain doesn't completely go away, but love is stronger than pain. Family is stronger than fear." One evening, back at home, Marcus found Jamie sitting at their mother's piano. He wasn't playing, just sitting with his hands resting on the keys. "You okay?" Marcus asked. Jamie nodded. "I was just thinking, all those years I spent drawing pictures of this piano, trying to remember what home felt like. And now I'm actually here. It still doesn't feel completely real." Marcus sat down beside him. "Play something with me." Together, they played Clair de Lune again, their mother's favorite. But this time, they didn't stumble. This time, the notes flowed naturally, each brother knowing instinctively when to lead and when to follow. The melody filled the house, spilling out through the open windows into the garden, where Grace stood listening with happy tears on her face. When the song ended, Jamie turned to Marcus. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" "For keeping your promise. You said you'd find me, and you did." Marcus smiled, but it was bittersweet. "I should have found you sooner." "You found me exactly when you were supposed to," Jamie said with certainty. "Any sooner, and I wouldn't have been ready. Any later, and I might have given up. But this was the right time." As the sun set over Atlanta, the two brothers sat together at their mother's piano, no longer haunted by the past, but hopeful for the future. They had lost 30 years, but they had the rest of their lives to make new memories. And somewhere up above, their parents were watching and smiling, finally at peace, knowing that their boys had found their way back to each other. The end. Sometimes life breaks us apart so that we can learn what truly matters. Not money, not success, but love, hope, and the courage to never stop believing that the people we've lost can be found again. If this story touched your heart, remember that there are real families out there living this nightmare right now. Real children waiting for someone to find them. Real brothers and sisters who refuse to give up hope. Never stop looking. Never stop hoping. Because love, true love, is stronger than time, distance, and even tragedy. Thank you for listening.